Hey everybody, Boomhauer69 here, and today's video, I'm going to talk about why I like the cars, the early days of automobiles, the cars from the late 1800s, the early 1900s. Why I like those era cars, and stuff. I shared a screen recorded screenshot of a video I did a long time ago, kind of explaining this, and so I thought I'd make a newer video of it, since I got a better camera that's gonna be a lot more clearer, because I know my old tablet camera wasn't of the best quality on that. My old tablet's camera on it wasn't the best of quality, so I thought I'd redo this video and make a kind of update video about that. And here's some pictures of cars in general, just some random cars, antique cars I found on the internet that will give you an idea of what era of cars I kind of like and stuff. Now, the reason why I like kind of the cars of the early days of automobiling from the 1900s and I'd say maybe around the 1930s and on back and stuff, is because in the early days of making a car or a truck or semi truck or whatever, they didn't have nothing to really go by. Like, nobody set the standards and stuff, and basically the early days of automobiles were mostly just basically some old farm boy taking an old horse buggy and slapping some motor on it they had around the barn and made them a car and stuff. And they really had to get creative and stuff, and they really had to think about things and figure out what did they need, and they basically used what they had around them and stuff, because in those days, the farms would have somewhere a stationary, like, hit and miss motor, like John Deere used to make the old famous hit and miss motors and stuff, and so basically the cars of the old days were just basically a farm boy putting his motor he had around the farm onto his horse buggy and tried to make it look nice. And if it looked nice, people would say, "Hey, I want one of those. Can you build me one?" And then eventually they became a car company in a way. Somebody had an idea and said, "Hey, I want this." And that's what I like about the early days of automobiles and stuff from the 1900s and 1930s on back, is because thinking about what they had to go through and stuff to make it, it's like, and the creativity, the mindset you had to have to build you a car, or the mindset to get the money to buy you a car if you could afford one that was already being built and sold and stuff, and just thinking about what they had to go through, the challenges they had to face, and the obstacles and stuff of how the early days, and that's what fascinates me, because they didn't have nothing to go by. All they had was just a horse buggy, and they had to figure out how can they make this horse buggy go without using horses. Why they called it a horseless carriage, because it was basically a horse carriage with a motor on it that didn't need a team of horses to pull and stuff. And you had to, in those days, get creative of how to prove to people that the horseless carriage was better than better than the horse and buggy, because if the automobile would have never took off and nobody would have really got their minds thinking and marketed it right, nobody would have been interested in it. We'd all still be using horse and buggy as our transportation and stuff. And because in those days they had primitive machinery, a lot of the machines and the technology we have nowadays to build cars, that wasn't around, that was not even thought of, All they basically had around the barn was maybe some hammers and nails and maybe a screwdriver and a wrench and stuff, and a lot of the hand tools and and stuff we have nowadays to work and fix on cars and do things were invented simply because of the automobile. You know, somebody had to come up with the idea, like, how can I make a tool that would make it easier to fix this and this and this on my automobile and stuff, you know. There's a song from the, I think it was like, it came out in like the 1920s and 1900s, around the time when the wax cylinder, the Edison talking machine, the Victor talking machine, the phonograph, and the gramophone were your music formats and music devices of the day, you know, where they're back when your phonograph and gramophones were basically your iPods of the heyday. There was always a song that talked about how a guy had to get out and get under to fix his automobile and stuff, and you can look that up on YouTube. I think it was by a singer called Bill Murray. He had to get out and had to get under to fix his automobile, where like the punchline was like he had to get, I think it was, the punchline was like, the chorus line was like he had to get under, get out and over and under to fix his little auto machine, because back in those days automobiles tend to break down a lot and stuff, and it's just thinking about how did they do that and stuff. And then on top of that, you look at some of these cars, when they built and sold cars back in the 1900s, they really went all out of trying to make something so basic look so elegant and beautiful, like using brass and shiny metals and gold, silver. They, you know, because back then that day, you know, they knew that, hey, if somebody's going to buy this automobile, because automobiles were super expensive before Henry Ford came along and helped make the assembly line and stuff, and make cars cheaper, because Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. All Henry Ford did was he came up with a solution to a problem to make the automobile a lot cheaper and make it for the common man. He built it basic and stuff, you know. He figured out, how can I build it cheap, basic, where people can afford it. That's what Henry Ford did for the auto industry. He just had an idea, a concept of manufacturing the automobile. Some people say he was the inventor of the assembly line. There's people that say he also stole the idea of the assembly line, and then there's people that say he just improved on the concept of the assembly line, making it successful and stuff when it comes to Ford Motor Company. And for those who don't know who Henry Ford is, Henry Ford was the original founding father of the Ford Motor Company and stuff. He actually tried building other auto manufacturers before Ford Motor Company, but the other auto manufacturing businesses, they failed, but he didn't give up, and then later on he came out with the Ford Motor Company, and then it became what it is today. As a matter of fact, Bill Ford, if you're seeing this, please do me a favor and bring back the Ford Model T, you know, the 2-speed one, if you see this. But yeah, that's what fascinates me about the cars of yesterday and stuff. It's thinking, how did they do it, and just the fascination behind how did they do that? What you know, and having to, you know, think, okay, they didn't have this tool over here. They didn't have, you know, CNC machines and milling presses, and they didn't have, you know, grinders and all that stuff. They didn't have a lot of those things, and you know, they had types of grinders and stuff back then, but they wasn't like what we have nowadays and stuff. They were really primitive, you know. And most of the industrial tools they had back in the day ran off a big giant stationary steam engine in a steam room and stuff, you know. A lot of factories back then used steam-powered engines to control what machinery they had and stuff. And so just thinking about how they had to go about it, like when I go to a car show and I see somebody with a Model T or like a 1909, like a Curb Dash Oldsmobile or some old car from the 1900s, I'm always sitting and looking at, like, how did they do that, trying to figure out, you know, because a lot of that stuff was just hand work. It was just like metal work back in the day, was just basically a guy, say this was a piece of crunched up metal. It was just basically back in the day, a guy taking a hammer and pounding out all the little bumps and scrapes to, make a flat piece of metal and curve of metal. It's just a guy taking one of these, just a hammer, and pounding things out and trying to make it look the best and stuff. And seeing how they made stuff so nice and elegant, and you can tell they put a lot of time and hand craftsmanship into it and stuff, they, like, I know they use on a lot of stuff, on trim work and stuff, shiny brass and stuff, and I really like how you could tell they took their time to try to make what they could and make it the best as possible, It's surprising to see to this day that there's still those cars from the 1900s and the 1920s and 30s out on the road today and stuff. And it's like, wow, it's like, and the thing is them old boys, they didn't, back in the day that came up with those cars, they didn't really think their automobiles would last as long as they did, and that's why I like it so much. It's just basically thinking about how did they have to go about doing things and how they invented the tools to be able to do the stuff they wanted to build on automobiles and stuff. And that's what fascinates me about the early days of technology, is thinking about how did they manage to do that and the kind of thought process behind it and stuff. Because with the modern day cars, like the classic cars of the 60s and 70s, you had other cars before that, and so you're able to have something to go off from, versus, the cars of the 1900s, where the only thing they had to go off was a horse and buggy, and that was it. And so they had to figure out something, And I really appreciate, what the famous guy Carl Benz did for the auto industry. And for those of you who don't know, Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz, Carl Benz, back in the 1800s, he was considered to be the first one to invent a horseless carriage automobile car that was practical. Because there was other people who tried to make motorized vehicles and stuff back in those days before Carl Benz, but they just wasn't practical and made sense and didn't make sense. Where Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz, him and his wife were able to successfully make a horseless carriage that was practical, and they was able to patent the idea, and they built the company. And then Carl Benz created the Carl Benz motor wagon, as they called it, in Germany. So Germany was the one who, in Europe, who created the first automobile, first practical concept automobile. And so Carl Benz, he built his concept, patented it, got a bunch of people to buy into it, and which encouraged other people to improve on his idea and stuff, and thus bringing to when Henry Ford came along in the 1900s and built his quadricycle and stuff. And so yeah, that's what fascinates me and stuff. It's just thinking about the history behind it, like how did they do that and stuff. And it got me to where I would love, if I had the money right now, I'd be trying to do what they did, build me a car that looks like, try to build me a horseless carriage and stuff, and build my own concept of the 1900s cars, because I really like those cars, because they took something so simple and basic, but knew how to make it beautiful and stuff. And so yeah, that's why I still, to this day, when it comes to cars, I don't, a lot of people like the cars of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, A lot of people like the 57 Chevy Bel Air, the Ford Mustangs, and all these, the muscle car era of cars and stuff. Me, I'm not into that. I'm the guy that, hey, give me a 2-speed Ford Model T and stuff, one with just high, low range and the Ford Model T, and I'll be happy. And I got to thinking to myself, one day, if I ever can be successful on YouTube and have have lots of money, I am going to one day build my own concept of a 1900s car where people will see me driving it and say, hey, that car looks like it's from the 1900s. What year, model, blah, blah, blah. And like, no, that's actually a modern day look like this is my own design, you know. I wouldn't, some people would want to get a Model T and try to restore it and make it kind of, and then do a little customization. Me, I would like to do what they did back in the 1900s, get a group of engineers and mechanical engineers and mechanics and whatever people I need to help me build something from the ground up and make it look like from the 1900s and stuff. And the only thing I would do with my concept of a vehicle is I would add a few modern day amenities, like simply headlights and turn signals and brake lights and stuff, you know, safety lights that you would definitely have to have, and then also seat belts as well. That'd be about the only modern day things I add to the concept of my car. And then as far as like throttle controls and different things, I would do like the old tractors have, just the old, for a throttle lever, or as the British call it, throttle lever and stuff, and so do some basic things where, because my idea would be is to make something that, like a little recreational toy basically, and then be able to market to the public and make something that still has that 1900s feels in the controls, but would be easy for common people to understand. Like, for example, if I could make a car that you can just pop the hood and pull a ripcord like a lawnmower, like a push lawnmower, and start it, I would do that versus trying to hand crank, because nowadays not many people know how to hand crank a motor over and stuff, you know. Me, I know how to hand crank a motor over, because I had at one time a Farmall A tractor that was a hand crank that had hand crank start on it, and I knew how to crank it over without losing a thumb there. So those guys that had the old cars that you got to hand crank over, they know what I'm talking about when losing a thumb or breaking a wrist, you know. I knew how to crank it over without breaking a wrist, you know. Some people would, when they hand crank a car over, they would do it, they go around in a big old circle when you're only supposed to do half a turn, and you're supposed to turn it half, back off, turn it half. And what you want to do is, there's a magneto, touching the ignition coil, like just like on a push lawnmower and stuff. When you pull the ripcord, you're spinning a flywheel magneto around that's creating spark on the ignition coil, which is igniting the spark plugs, which spark plugs act like a lighter, and simply the lighter will then, the spark plug lighters will then ignite the gas, and that's what you're doing with a hand crank. You're just basically, it's just big old rod that you slide in the hole, and you crank it over. And what you want to do is you want to get your magneto where it feels like there's tension on it, and then you want to, as quickly as possible, crank it over a half a turn, spin back, crank it over another half a turn until you finally get it started and stuff. Some cars you had to have a little choke lever down there too that you'd have to pull out and crank to get it fired up and stuff. But basically all hand cranks doing this is creating a basically electrical current to the spark plugs to ignite the gas, just like how a car starter works and stuff. You know, you have a battery that's cranking a motor over that is basically cranking pistons and stuff to and all that stuff to start up a car. You know, I'm not a super expert on automobiles and stuff, but I know the basic concept of how automobile kind of works, you know. And yeah, because what happens is, with a hand crank, your hand crank is also spinning pistons and causing gas to get into the cylinders to ignite and stuff. Because what's happening is the pistons are pushing gas and oxygen up to where the spark plugs are at, where the spark is, to ignite your fuel and your oxygen and stuff, and creating the friction to get the car to move. But yeah, that's just why I like the cars of the 1900s more, because thinking about how they had to go about things and how to create pistons and different things, because back then nobody really knew pistons or anything like that. So, You know, and thinking about what Carl Benz had to go through just to make a motor that he could put on a horseless carriage and stuff, and think, man, how did he come up with that? And, you know, and basically how they built cars back in the 1900s, it was just some guy taking a piece of paper and writing and drawing out what he could do, and then he looked around looked around the farm and see what he had to make him a vehicle and stuff. And because one of the things that helped the automotive industry is auto manufacturers would talk about how the horseless carriage was better because you didn't have to worry about feeding it when you're not using it, you know, like versus horses, using a horse and carriage, and you have with horses, you gotta feed them even when you're not using them to travel into town and stuff. You gotta feed them no matter what. Whereas the horseless carriage, the automobile, the only time you gotta feed it gas, feed it anything, is when you use it, and that was one of the selling points to get people to buy an automobile, is telling people, hey, you ain't gotta feed this car when you gotta use it, versus, you know, the horse and buggy and stuff. So yeah. But yeah, if I was rich and loaded with money, I'd love to try to build my own from the ground up concept of a horseless carriage and stuff. Maybe in the near future, I would like to work on that in the near future somehow when I got the money and be able to make that a reality and stuff. Basically, make like basically a recreational vehicle, you know, something that would get people's attention and stuff. But yeah, that's why I like the cars of the 1900s. It's just trying to comprehend how they did things back in the day and what sparked the ideas and stuff, what got them to want to do such a thing and stuff, and all the hard labor and how they went out to figure things out and all that stuff. So that's why. It's just what the challenges they had to face, you know, to create a horseless carriage and stuff. That's why I'm fascinated with the classic cars of the 1900s and 1800s and stuff. And that's my era of cars I personally enjoy and like. So if you like this sort of content, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't like it. Comment your thoughts below. What did you think? Was this a good video, bad video? I know I added some few informative things in here, and if you thought it was a good video, bad video, you know, comment your thoughts below. Hope you all have a good day. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this video with everyone you know, because that's going to help me, Boomhauer69, in growing this YouTube channel and trying to make it successful and stuff. I will honestly admit that I'm not very good at making videos, but I do love making videos, and that's the whole point of this YouTube thing. It's doing something that I love, even if I'm not the greatest at it and stuff. I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy interacting with all you, so hope you all have a good day. Thank you for watching Boomhauer69 YouTube channel, and I hope you all have a good day.